A giant over 18 meters tall suddenly appears on the coastline of Lilliput. The king urgently mobilizes the entire army. Thousands of soldiers use specially made iron chains to bind this colossal creature firmly to the ground. However, just as the trial is about to begin, the giant uses one stream of urine to instantly extinguish the roaring fire in the palace, saving the lives of the entire royal family. From prisoner to national hero, this man takes less than 24 hours. But no one knows he's actually just a bottom-level employee who's worked in a New York mailroom for 10 years, fabricating one massive lie after another to pursue the female coworker he loves. This man's name is Lemuel Gulliver. He's worked as a mail clerk at a New York magazine for a full 10 years. His daily job is sorting and delivering letters and packages to various departments, day after day without any accomplishments. He has a crush on Darcy, the travel editor, but has never had the courage to confess. One day, Darcy casually asks him about his hobbies in the break room. Gulliver, possessed by some strange impulse, says he loves adventure travel and even fabricates many non-existent adventure experiences. Darcy listens with great interest. She happens to have an assignment covering the Bermuda Triangle and asks Gulliver if he'd be willing to take on the job. Gulliver is stuck. To avoid being exposed in front of Darcy, he agrees despite his misgivings. Before departure, Darcy asks if he knows how to operate a boat. Gulliver pats his chest and guarantees he's a natural sailor. In reality, he can barely even swim, let alone pilot a vessel. Not long after setting out to sea, Gulliver encounters a violent storm. Massive waves strike one after another. The small boat pitches violently on the surface. He grips the helm desperately but can't control the direction at all. A huge whirlpool suddenly appears and swallows him, boat and all. When Gulliver opens his eyes again, he finds himself lying on a strange beach. His body secured firmly to the ground by countless ropes. His limbs are locked by wooden frames. He can't even move his fingers. Even more bizarre, he's surrounded by humans the size of his palm. A small uniformed officer walks up to him and commands in a shrill voice that Gulliver submit immediately. Gulliver thinks he's dreaming and uses a little force to try to break free. Unexpectedly, this movement instantly uproots the stakes. Countless little people flip up and down with the ropes. The scene descends into chaos. The officer Edward is clearly enraged. He rides over on a war horse that's mouse-sized to Gulliver, raises a 2-meter spear and stabs it viciously into Gulliver's foot. Gulliver screams in pain. Taking advantage of his distraction, soldiers quickly throw out more hooked ropes and hook his pants. Several small people pull hard simultaneously. Gulliver loses balance and crashes to the ground. His head slams heavily into the beach and he passes out. When Gulliver wakes, he finds himself being escorted into the capital. The streets on both sides are packed with onlooking little people. Everyone stares curiously at this unprecedented giant creature. Gulliver is brought to the palace square. Soldiers turn winches to slowly lift him up. General Edward reports to the king, claiming he's captured a monster from overseas and hopes to use this as leverage to marry Princess Mary. The king examines Gulliver carefully, finds the thing dangerous and troublesome, and waves his hand to indicate he should be thrown directly into the death cell. In the dark, damp dungeon, Gulliver meets another prisoner, Horatio. This young man looks refined and scholarly, nothing like someone who would commit a serious crime. Horatio explains with a bitter smile that he merely looked at Princess Mary once in the marketplace, and General Edward arrested him on charges of offending the royal family and sentenced him to life in prison. Gulliver gasps after hearing this. He remembers that when he was carried into the palace earlier, he stared curiously at the princess for several seconds. By this standard, even the death penalty probably wouldn't be enough. The next day, Gulliver is dragged out of the dungeon and used as a beast of burden for plowing. He drags a massive plow back and forth across the fields. Just as Gulliver is working despondently, a shrill alarm suddenly sounds in the distance. It turns out the neighboring nation Blefuscu has launched a surprise attack. Their agents infiltrated the Lilliput palace to set fires and simultaneously kidnapped Princess Mary. Edward immediately controls Gulliver to sprint toward the palace. When they finally reach the scene, Edward jumps off Gulliver's shoulder and orders everyone not to interfere. He wants to rescue the princess alone to gain the king's favor. Horatio takes advantage of the chaos to secretly unlock Gulliver's control device. Once free, Gulliver immediately rushes toward the princess's palace. 2 Blefuscu soldiers are escorting Mary and preparing to escape. Gulliver reaches out and grabs both of them, tossing them into the moat like baby chicks. Mary looks at this former prisoner with lingering shock, her eyes full of gratitude. Before anyone can breathe a sigh of relief, the fire has already spread to the main hall where the king is. The little people's buckets are utterly useless against this massive fire. The king is trapped by the window, calling loudly for help. Gulliver rushes to the palace and reaches out to rescue the king, but his fingers are burned painfully by the flames. He tries several times but can't get close. The king is about to be overcome by the thick smoke. In desperation, Gulliver thinks of a solution. He undoes his pants and releases a powerful stream directly at the flames. The massive flow of water instantly extinguishes the fire. Both the king and the palace are saved. When General Edward arrives and sees this scene, his face turns iron gray with rage. His hero plan has completely fallen apart. To thank Gulliver for saving his life, the king holds a grand banquet at the palace. Gulliver takes this opportunity to request the king release Horatio. The king readily agrees, and Horatio regains his freedom. At this point, Gulliver begins boasting about his origins. He claims he's not an ordinary person, but the president of a powerful nation with countless followers and admirers. His drifting to Lilliput was purely accidental. The little people have never seen the outside world and believe Gulliver's claims completely. The king learns that Gulliver temporarily cannot return to his homeland and decides to dedicate the entire nation's resources to entertaining this distinguished guest. Craftsmen build Gulliver a massive villa by the sea. Just laying the foundation requires over 1,000 workers. To keep Gulliver from getting bored, the king also orders the theater to be renovated. All scripts and performances are planned and directed by Gulliver. Gulliver transforms from a prisoner into a national hero, enjoying unprecedented honor. However, the good times don't last. When General Edward sends people to search the coast, they discover Gulliver's boat. The vessel was washed into the reef area by waves, its contents scattered everywhere. Soldiers curiously fiddle with the phone. One soldier pokes a hole in a Coke can. The powerful pressure directly blasts him away. At this moment, Gulliver picks up the phone and listens to the messages. His disguise has been discovered by Darcy, who angrily accuses him and tells him never to come back. General Edward is overjoyed upon hearing the news. He promises to repair the boat and send Gulliver away within a week. Gulliver returns to the palace and falls into contemplation. Returning to New York means becoming that humble mail clerk again. But staying here, he's a revered figure. Gulliver ultimately decides to stay. The king also takes the opportunity to appoint him as Grand General, commanding the entire army. Edward goes from a powerful general to Gulliver's deputy. This makes the resentment in his heart grow deeper. Just then, Blefuscu becomes restless again. Edward secretly colludes with the enemy nation and shuts down all of Lilliput's defense systems. The Blefuscu army receives the signal and immediately launches a total offensive. Hundreds of warships fire simultaneously. Cannonballs rain down on the palace. The king urgently summons Gulliver. Gulliver takes off his shirt and strides toward the coast. Looking at the dense enemy fleet, he tries to resolve the issue peacefully. Gulliver shouts to the Blefuscu commander, hoping everyone can cooperate in putting on an act. Pretending to be afraid, and then retreating separately, the enemy commander thinks Gulliver is insulting them and orders concentrated fire. Dozens of cannons fire simultaneously. Countless cannonballs hit Gulliver's body. Gulliver closes his eyes, waiting for death, but finds himself completely unharmed. All the cannonballs are bounced back, destroying the enemy's own warships. Gulliver is amazed to discover he seems invulnerable. With his confidence greatly increased, he rushes directly into the sea and drags all the enemy ships back to Lilliput harbor like toy boats. This overwhelming victory brings Gulliver's prestige to its peak. The king builds him an even more luxurious palace and even assigns an entire armored division specifically to give him massages. Giant portraits of Gulliver hang on both sides of the streets. People worship him as an idol. General Edward completely breaks down. He flees to Blefuscu overnight and offers up the blueprints for battle armor designed by Gulliver. Blefuscu's engineers work day and night to create an iron giant. This day, Gulliver is holding a concert in the square. Thousands upon thousands of little people gather at his feet cheering. Suddenly, the alarm sounds again. A massive metal sphere descends from the sky. Gulliver laughs and says it must be some kind of toy again. Before he finishes speaking, the metal sphere unfolds and transforms into a mechanical giant taller than Gulliver. In the cockpit, Edward grins viciously and launches an attack. Gulliver tries to resist but discovers the opponent's strength far exceeds his own. He's lifted up by the mechanical giant and swung around. Gulliver completely panics. He kneels on the ground, raises his hands in surrender, and begs loudly for mercy. The little people look at him with expectant eyes, waiting for their hero to create another miracle. However, Gulliver's next words leave everyone's hearts like dead ashes. He admits he's not some president, just an ordinary mail clerk from New York. Everything he said before was lies. With these words, the little people's faith instantly collapses. No one is willing to resist anymore. Gulliver is sentenced to exile to the legendary Island of Terror. Gulliver is thrown onto a small boat, drifting alone toward unknown waters. When he wakes again, he finds himself lying in a place both familiar and strange. The surrounding buildings look like the normal world. Gulliver thinks he's finally home, but the next moment, a massive glass bottle descends from the sky and covers his head. At this moment, Darcy wakes from unconsciousness and discovers her body is completely bound. She's surrounded by large numbers of small people. Meanwhile, Horatio risks his life to escape Lilliput and ventures alone to the Island of Terror to find Gulliver. He locates a dejected Gulliver in a dollhouse in the land of giants and informs him that Darcy has been captured by Edward. Hearing that Darcy is in danger because of him, Gulliver's heart fills with guilt. He realizes he must pull himself together and take responsibility. The two manage to escape the giant island. Gulliver uses a parachute to jump from high altitude back to Lilliput. After returning to the land of little people, Gulliver sneaks into the prison and rescues Darcy. Facing Darcy's questioning, Gulliver finally comes clean about his true identity and feelings. He's just an ordinary mailroom employee, but his affection for Darcy is genuine. Just as the two are about to leave, Edward appears piloting a giant mecha built according to Gulliver's blueprints. Gulliver decides to stop running away. He's going to challenge Edward with real courage. The stakes are that if Gulliver wins, the land of little people will return to its former peace. With Darcy's encouragement and Horatio's assistance, Gulliver uses his wits to defeat the mecha. After the battle ends, Lilliput and Blefuscu finally reach a peace agreement. Horatio also gains the king's approval for his brave performance and gets to be with Princess Mary. Gulliver and Darcy find a way home,